Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi lo echsar. Binoteh sheyarbitzeni al mei menuchot yanachaleni. Nafshi shoveh. Yanacheni v'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki chelech begitz al mavet. Lo ira ki ata imati. Shiftecha mishantecha hema yenachamoni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorirai. Di shanta vashamen roshi kosiri vaya. Ach tov chesed yerdifuni, ko yamei chayai, v'shaveti b'beit Adonai leorech yamim. Friends, I've recited for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. As we seek comfort and consolation on these difficult days, we often turn to the psalmist. And so I ask you now to join me as we recite together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us, as we remember Ruth Wager. To her children, to Steve and Sherry, and also to Lisa and Mark, to her grandchildren, Rachel, Matt, Jeffrey, Jake, to so many loved members of the family and cherished friends. We've come together today to remember, but also to celebrate the life of your beloved Ruth. Our sages, in their wisdom, have taught us that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness, from ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back, we pray, to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred journey. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Ruth's journey began here in Cleveland. She was born in 1928 to her Hungarian immigrant parents, Harry and Ida Joseph. She was the second youngest of 10 children. Together with her siblings, Molly, Esther, Max, Frank, Frida, Anne, Rose, Pearl, and Fred, all of blessed memory, the Joseph family made their way through some of the most difficult and challenging years in our nation's history. Her mother, Ida, was a homemaker who worked to create a warm and loving home. And her father, Harry, he was what we might call a rag peddler who sold his goods off a horse and cart. The family resided in the Glenville neighborhood, and Ruth and her siblings slept 3 to a bed. The Depression years were very tough for this family. Many of her siblings dropped out of school to go to work. Some went off to serve our country. And Ruth would sell what we call barely used or soon-to-be expired bus passes to help the family as well. She attended school. She had a large group of friends, and she was always very, very social. She graduated from Glenville High School, and she was the only one of her siblings to receive a high school diploma. Following graduation, she went into the workforce doing office work for the White Motor Company. Now, it was somewhere around this time that Ruth attended the wedding of a dear friend. Her girlfriend, Shirley Horowitz, was getting married to Albert Wager, the brother of William Wager. Willie was a handsome young man, and they met at the wedding. The attraction to Ruth was immediate. She was only 22 years, and Willie was 11 years her senior. Following this particular wedding, the two of them started to date, and the courtship was brief. They were married just a few months later on February 24th, 1951, by Rabbi Rudolph Rosenthal of blessed memory. And together, Ruth and Willie enjoyed a wonderful life and a wonderful group of friends. Saturday evenings were dedicated to dining out with other couples. And with Willie's professional side, his sales in aluminum siding, there were many opportunities for Ruth to accompany her husband on business trips. These were fabulous excursions that took them to Rome, to Acapulco, throughout the Caribbean, to Hawaii, just to name a few. They also had their shared love of Hershey bars, I'm told, allowing themselves to enjoy that once a week. And of all the sweets that they enjoyed together, the sweetest thing for them was, of course, their family, their children. And when Steve and Sherry entered into their world, the Wager family portrait felt complete. Steve and Sherry, your parents provided for you. Dad selling aluminum siding and Mom working for various offices, including Women's Hospital. Your father and mother did all they could to provide a good life for you. And your mom would also work at times in sales in retail stores. She loved clothing, so selling in a clothing store was an excellent fit for her. Your mom was so fashionable, always well put together. And she also kept a beautiful home. Your home on Staunton Road in Cleveland was clean and organized. Mom was a little bit of a neat freak, but it worked quite well for her. And Sherry and Steve, you remember a mom who was involved in the lives of her children, of you. She was a mom who was active with the PTA, a mom who attended all of Steve's sporting events, whether it was Little League in the earlier days, Steve, or in your high school years, coming to your football games and your wrestling matches. And Sherry, you recall a mom who was the protector. She would defend you and your brother no matter what. Sherry, there might have been a few times she received phone calls from the school that you weren't in classes. Or Steve, there might have been that one time that you were arrested for directing some colorful language towards a police officer. These were in your high school years as well. But no matter the circumstances, your mom was your defender. She'd be on the phone and she would say, "Not my Sherry, not my Steve." She was always there and had your back. And she encouraged both of you to pursue your dreams. She reminded both of you that you could accomplish anything if you put your mind to it. And she had this little quote, this little saying, "Better to have it and need it than to need it and not have it." Your mom had a big personality. She was funny, and she loved to tell her corny Jewish jokes. Just a couple weeks ago, Sherry, you and Mom went for dinner, and your mom just delighted in telling corny jokes to every person, whether she knew them or not, everyone you ran into. Now, after 34 years of marriage, your dad passed from a heart attack. He was only 68 years old. And your mom somehow found the strength to continue on. She kept up with her activities. She continued playing tennis, a sport that she did not take up until she was in her 40s, and she was actually quite good at it. She continued her exercise, her swimming, her daily walks, which were always a 4-mile walk. Your mom enjoyed her weekly Maj game and her card club, and she loved watching movies. She was an avid reader, and on the day of her passing, she had Michelle Obama's book open right next to her. Your mom was sharp when it came to current events and politics, and she became a Cavs fan who really, really liked LeBron. She didn't totally comprehend the game, but she loved her Cleveland Cavaliers. And after her children were on their own, she and Willie moved into an apartment in Shaker Heights. And after his passing, Ruth moved to Sherry Park Apartments. 4 years ago, she moved to R.H. Meyer's independent living, and she was very much independent. Ruth still took care of all of her affairs. She paid her bills, and she diligently stayed on top of things. All matters that she needed to tend to, she did her best to stay on top of. Most importantly, though, Ruth maintained a great group of friends. And at R.H. Meyer's, she made new friends. She was always making friends. Let me tell you something about Grandma Ruth. In her eyes and in her heart, her grandchildren were the best. And by the best, I mean they were the most beautiful, the most handsome, the smartest. Matt, Jake, Rachel, and Jeffrey, you know how much your grandma loved you and adored you. And being your grandmother was her greatest joy in life. I also have to mention her niece, Isla. Ruth became like a second mother, and Isla was like another daughter to Ruth, and this was a treasured relationship that Ruth held very close to her heart. And speaking of the heart, our tradition has always taught that words which come from the heart enter directly to the heart. Today, there are a few members of the family who have words in their heart they want to share with all of us. And so first, I want to call on her son, Steve.
I just want to thank everybody coming to honor, to honor my mother. Thank you. As anyone who knew my mother knows, at times she could certainly be a handful, but her other aspects far outweighed the handful part of her. As Cantor discussed, she was the second youngest of 10 children, 7 girls and 3 boys, and they were very, very poor growing up. And recollection as a child is, in spite of their frequent bickering as adults, they cared a lot about each other and they took care of each other. The other day, as my sister and I were going through my mother's things, I came across one of my aunt's cable TV bills from a few years ago that my mother had paid. And it wasn't a lot of money, but my aunt couldn't afford to pay for it. And I asked my sister about this, and she told me, which I didn't know at all, was that almost all of my aunts and uncles gave this one aunt some money every month. Each gave what they could afford. Many of them gave only a small amount, but they gave. When my sister and I were growing up, all of my aunts and uncles lived within about 10 minutes of each other and often across the street or a few blocks away. My parents would take us to see them, aunts, uncles, and numerous cousins almost every weekend, and Sherry and I have fond memories of that. Also, as Cantor mentioned, my parents very much enjoyed their friends and socialized often. I remember as a kid having my living room filled with adults, talking and enjoying each other, and given the times, the room would be thick with cigarette smoke, and it was hard to know how they could see each other, but we didn't know about secondhand smoke then. My mother was quite the talker, and I can't recall a time when she called me and didn't call back 3 minutes later, telling me that she forgot to tell me something that was very important. Often she would call again. Also, as the cantor said, she had a penchant for telling corny jokes about elderly Jews. I thought they were very funny, but my family says that's because I'm old. The center of my mother's life was her children. She was very involved in mine, my sister's lives. We were her pride and joy. She let everyone know how absolutely wonderful we were, usually to our embarrassment. She was active in the PTA. She attended whatever school events we were in. She attended all of my sporting events. She was warm and welcoming to our friends. She enjoyed having them over, and she always kept the cookie jar full for them. My friends enjoyed talking to her. It seemed like they truly did. Thanksgiving was a special time. She would prepare a large meal, and then all of our friends would come over for dessert, and they would stay late into the night. As Sherry and I became adults, she was very supportive of whatever career choices we made, as long as mine always led towards medical school. Once Sherry and I had children, my mother became as proud of them as she'd been of us. Her grandchildren became her pride and joy. She reveled in their accomplishments. She wanted to know, often in excruciating detail, how they were doing and what they were doing. One regret we have is that we didn't live closer, so she could spend more time with them, but she enjoyed the time she did spend. She got to see them grow into young adults. She enjoyed that, and I'm glad that she was able to see it. My nephew, Jeffrey, is going to graduate from college this May, Sherry's son. He goes to school in Colorado. My mother recently had been getting increasingly frail, and in my opinion, would not have been able to travel to see him graduate. She was also aware of how difficult travel was for her. Nonetheless, she told Sherry and me that there was no way she was going to miss this graduation. And last week she had made plans with her aide to go this week to, I think Gabriel's, the aide said, to buy something to wear for her graduation. And the aide told me that she told her she didn't care what people told her. She was going to go there. She was not going to miss his graduation. Mom, we all miss you and we love you.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you so much. I want to call now on her niece, Isla.
Morning. Thank you again, like Steve said, for everybody coming. I am the youngest niece of 10 siblings. My father was the youngest, and he died the first. So to the family, it was a huge shock back then. And I was only 21 years old. And those of you that know me know that I don't really have a mother. So Steve and Sherry are a lot older than I am, and they were already out of the house, either in medical school or graduate school, and she decided that she was going to take on the role of telling me what to do every day for my whole life, up until last Friday. We had a very special relationship, and every week we talked, and exactly like Steve said, the most important thing in her life was her children. She told me, because I wasn't as close to my second cousins because they lived in Colorado and New York, oh my God, Isla, do you know how brilliant Jeffrey is? He is brilliant. Steve, did you see the article? Did you get the article I mailed you? I mailed you an article. Steve is rated one of the best doctors in New York. Sherry, did you know that Mark is a doctor? Do you know that Sherry married a doctor? I said, yes, Aunt Ruth, I know that Sherry married a doctor. This went on all the time, exactly like Steve said, but they don't really know exactly. And Steve married a lawyer. Steve's a doctor, and he married a lawyer. Ma Isla, did you know? Yes, Aunt Ruth, I know. They've been married since I was a little girl. Not that she was just a mother and a grandmother. She was an aunt. She wasn't just an aunt to me. She was an aunt to the other 25 cousins that we have because we were all here. So until I moved to Chicago on a daily basis, it was who talked to Aunt Ruth? Well, Aunt Ruth wants everybody there at 7 o'clock. Nope, Aunt Ruth said 7:30. Who's picking up Aunt Ruth? Who's picking up Aunt Rosie? Who's going where? She was the matriarch of our family. She told everybody where to go and where to be, and we listened because nobody doesn't listen to Ruth Wager. You need to listen to Ruth Wager. Her kids and I understood that it came from a very loving place. So if we didn't like what she said, it went in one ear and out the other. But she did everything with the greatest of intentions. She taught everybody how to do a lot of things. She had a very, very strong personality. And even though she wasn't my mother, she was definitely like the second mother I didn't have. I think maybe a little of that rubbed off on me, and I have a very strong personality too. But it got her through the Depression. It got her family through years that, thank God, most of us will never know. But it got me through a lot also. So it just goes to show you that you need to talk in life, and you need to enjoy life, and you need to have friends. And she had lots of friends, and she used to tell me about her friends all the time. And one thing I always remember is she had a very close friend from a long time ago, and she always dressed beautiful. And she had a lot of money, and she dressed beautiful. And she always told me that, you know, my friend, I don't remember her name, I think it was Alice or Shirley, but I don't remember. She's always wearing St. John, always wearing St. John. She picks me up, we go play Maj, we go eat lunch, she's wearing St. John. And when I could afford to buy her something expensive and show her give back, it had nothing to do with money. It was just the fact that I sent her a birthday present once, and she opened it up, and it was a St. John suit. That was a very good day for her, and she was very into fashion. She used to revel in the fact that she always dressed beautiful, and her clothes were from TJ Maxx, and her friends were from wherever, and she always dressed beautiful. Today's a hard day for all of us, but 90 years old. I think a lot of us would sign up now for 90 years old, to not to have cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease. She lived life, and like Steve said, she exercised, she played tennis, she dated a lot after Uncle Willie died, and she had lots of people that cared about her, and that's what's important in life, friends and family. Nothing really else matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Isla. And finally, I'd like to call on her granddaughter, Rachel.
My grandma, every time she came to visit, she would talk about, do you remember when you were little and we would play tea party and we would do all the stuffed animals and we'd make them names for each other? And she was always calling, and she would ask about, at the time, my friends she had met and how they were doing. And recently she met my boyfriend, and every time she called, she would ask about him and ask questions about him. And I remember when I was younger and I lived in the city, every time she came over, she wanted to take me shopping. And she always called wherever, oh, Rachel, I have something for you. I have to bring you this. And I don't remember what it was. It was usually jewelry, but she would bring it. And she was always sending cards, whatever holiday it was, whatever excuse to send a card, to send money, or just to say, hi, I love you. She was a big person. That's all.
A little later this afternoon, following the internment at Mount Olive Cemetery, the family will receive visitors at the home of Michael and Peggy Wager. The address is 40 Ridge Creek Trail in Moreland Hills, and they'll accept visitors until 6 p.m. this evening. Tomorrow night, there'll be a visitation from 7 until 9 p.m. at R.H. Myers. Anyone who might wish to make a contribution in memory of Ruth, the family has asked that you might consider Menorah Park. And beginning this Friday night, and for 4 Fridays, we will be reading Ruth's name at the Temple Tifereth Israel in our 6 o'clock Shabbat service, and everyone, of course, is welcome to join us. At this time, we take a moment as we remember Ruth and all the beautiful things that she did here for her family, for her friends, for her community. And as you're able, I invite you to rise for the memorial prayer as we ask God to accept her soul. El male rachamim shochen mamromim Hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfech hashchina B'malot kedoshim utorim Gezochar arakim asirim Et nishmat Rivka bat Chaim Tzvi Shahalacha leolama began Eden techem menuchata Ahna baharachamim astirecha B'seiter knafech leolamim V'titzuror b'tzurarachayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata V'tanuach b'shalom Al mishkava v'nomar Amen. O merciful God, who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, we ask that you remember our beloved Ruth, who has gone now to her eternal home. Merciful God, may we remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living, and may she rest forever in peace. Amen. On behalf of the family, we thank you for your love and support on this sad yet important day.